Well, hello everybody. Todd McDougall here from Winnipeg Alternative Media. Tonight, as you might notice right here off the hop, usually Thursday night broadcast right here at 9 p.m. Central would be a Prairie Truth broadcast, but I'm kind of trying to change the way that I view those things. And I've gone back and forth with that many times over the years, so I'm just trying to make it a definitive now. That when it's a broadcast that is solely going to be about one guest, like I'm not going to be talking about any other news stories. There's not going to be any intro. There's not going to be any monologue. I'm not going to be jumping into anything after the guest. It's a broadcast solely and specifically all about a show. Sorry, all about one guest, one kind of topic, one conversation, really. And because that's what we're doing tonight, I kind of feel like that's not really the true spirit of a Prairie Truth broadcast. I mean, usually we're covering everything from local to international news, and I love that style of broadcast, and I think that's really what a Prairie Truth broadcast is. And so, I'll do my best to maybe keep the singular guest broadcast to not Thursday night, so that we don't have this kind of confusion again. But tonight, that's what it is, okay? So it's not a Prairie Truth broadcast. It's just straight what you see here on your screen. We have a guest with us tonight that is an absolute one of a kind. I think this broadcast that's why another reason I don't want to give it any other title to go along with it. I think it would be taking away from the actual content, as this is a very one-of-a-kind broadcast, one-of-a-kind guest with incredibly important, incredibly unique, special information to dive into. And so, so we're going to be doing that right away. Before we do that, and I will do a quick little intro, of course, I do want to mention, two things. One, again, apologies for what should have been a really fun, even just 10 minutes worth of conversation and comedy with Jared Nathan this past Monday. But as things just seem to happen with us sometimes, we get the worst of luck. And, he dropped the phone call. His phone went dead on him within a matter of minutes. And then that was it. I, tried calling and messaging many, many times, hoped that he would try to get back on maybe with the friend's phone that he was with. Didn't happen. We'll certainly, as we always do, try to get him back and do a proper broadcast with him and really have some fun with Jared, because I know from talking to him even on the phone a little bit, lots of fun. But news little bit number two, in the same spirit of always trying to get back things that were kind of dropped or messed up. The last 49th Parallel broadcast I did over a week ago with Cole McLarnon, a Winnipegger that kind of had some really interesting stuff and almost some whistleblowing type stuff from his time spent around Richardson International Airport to do with UFOs. We're going to have him on. That's going to be a redo 100%, I would imagine, hopefully just even within the next few days, hopefully even this weekend. I will get Cole on. I have spoken with him, and we are going to iron out the whole thing about him not being able to put imagery and stuff up on the screen at his own free will without having to have me take care of it, because he's got a whole library. So that's all going to be all ironed out. We're going to have him on in the next couple of days. There we go. I've done all my shopkeeping, everybody. Let's get into a quick intro. Of course, a quick thanks from our sponsors. We'll get into that in just a second. And then right to our guest, everybody. Thanks for being with us. This is Winnipeg Alternative Media, everybody. Your Prairie Truth. And of course, as always, we want to say a huge thanks to our wonderful sponsors at Bulldog Demolition. If you're in the Winnipeg area, you want any kind of demolition done, commercial, residential, indoor, outdoor, and support citizen journalism and free speech, well then, look no further.
Sometimes you gotta knock it all down and start from scratch. When you do, call the experts at Bulldog Demolition.
Here, boy!
They're up for the job. Commercial and residential. They'll safely demo houses, garages, buildings, driveways, sidewalks, and more, including interior demolition. Concerned about mold or asbestos on your property? Consider it remediated. Some jobs you need to leave to the professionals. Call Bulldog Demolition.
And you know what? Because I'm not exactly sure when I'll be back with the Prairie Truth, I always want to make sure to cover some of our local bases here. And as always, like you'll always hear me say at almost any broadcast, Prairie Truth or not, if you are a Winnipeg or a Manitoban and you don't know Marty Gold and the Great Canadian Talk Show and the best citizen journalism in the country, well, then, of course, you're missing out. Go to actionline.ca, anywhere you can go find podcasts and check out the Great Canadian Talk Show.
When you support the Great Canadian Talk Show, your donation makes sure that the investigations, the interviews, the fact-finding, the truth-telling can carry on. When you sponsor the Great Canadian Talk Show, you're telling the community that you think their stories matter. Our public affairs coverage continues to make a difference, challenging the slanted media narratives and giving a voice to the community. When you provide funding for the Great Canadian Talk Show, you're supporting old-fashioned investigative reporting that matters. Support TGCTS today.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, and now I'll put this title back up on screen one more time. Without further ado, let's bring on our guest for the night, Mr. Leo Zagami. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Leo. How are you?
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on Winnipeg Alternative Media to present my latest book and to start this dialogue with, of course, your Canadian followers and listeners and viewers that I'm sure they might not know who is Leo Zagami, or some of them might, but maybe we can refresh a little bit their minds on who is Leo Zagami. And so let me introduce myself. I'm an author with also a past as an investigative journalist, but before that I was also directly involved in the so-called New World Order, and I am a former Freemason. You can't actually be a former Freemason. You are somebody who is inactive in Freemasonry and in many other secret societies that we commonly refer to as the Illuminati. And the book in particular, which we will be discussing today, talks about a subject which is actually not known by the majority of people, even within Freemasonry, and it's Islamic Freemasonry and the secret societies behind the eternal conflict in the Middle East. So my, let's say, background comes from a family, an aristocratic family, connected also to the British royal family, the Lion family of the Queen Mother. On my father's side, instead, I am connected to a family that was heirs to the Sacred Roman Empire as tutors of Frederick II Barbarossa, and this led me to be introduced from a very early age to let's say, a more secretive and privileged world that not many people have access to. So I decided at one point to come out of what they commonly refer as the Illuminati, which is a much more complex mixed network of secret societies. And I started a blog in 2006, and later on, when I saw that the internet was already at the time privy to some growing censorship, I started to publish books. I started in Japan and later on in my native country of Italy. And in 2015, I started to produce, 2014, 2015, I started to produce books in the English language. And from that moment onwards, I also started for a period of time a collaboration with InfoWars that lasted for a few years. But then I had to flee from Italy because I was persecuted for the work I was doing exposing the Vatican. So here I am now in America. I moved in 2019, and since then I have been living in Southern California. And this year I was naturalized American, and actually today I also renounced formally to my Italian citizenship this morning at the consulate. So it's an historic day, let's say, for me, because many people might keep double citizenship for a number of reasons, but I don't believe in dual citizenship, because either you are one thing or either you are the other. And also, a lot of people might not know that, but if you retain the Italian citizenship, you will be still subject to their constitution, even living abroad, and their constitution is definitely not in line with the values that I have. And at the same time, they arrest journalists, they persecute authors like me, and there is no freedom of press. In fact, Italy is number 46 or 47 behind a lot of African countries, and people are not capable of exposing the truth in Italy because they get immediately silenced. So for that reason, I'm no longer Italian starting from today.
And I'm sure the Vatican and the secret societies that are underneath it have nothing to do with that at all.
No, it's one of the main reasons. The fact that I went on exposing the Vatican with a bestseller like Pope Francis, the Last Pope, and then, of course, with all my Confessions of an Illuminati series, made it literally impossible for me and for my wife to keep on residing in Italy, because we received a number of threats. I was arrested. I was locked up for weeks with no real reason, if not to silence me. And of course, they were not successful in their endeavor, especially when they tried to bring me in front of a kangaroo court because of the books I was writing, to take my passport and at that point be a prisoner of Italy. You have to understand, I'm half British, half Italian, so that was something that I didn't want to. It's like my DNA is already mixed. I'm not only Italian, and I didn't want to be a prisoner in a country which I don't respect, because, like I said, have limited freedom. Even in the rest of Europe today, there is a lot of growing censorship. I mean, Europe is a technocracy which is squashed between, of course, America and Russia. And as we know, it's soon to become probably a war zone. The whole of Europe in September could become a war zone.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And in fact, that's, I guess, some of the most important international news that is, continuing to break daily right now. Incredible things happening on that front, which I guess, I mean, it's with someone like yourself that has such incredible history, such incredible research and such, it's easy to right off the hop say, wow, we could talk for hours and hours. This could be, endless amounts of different broadcasts. And hey, maybe we'll get to that point. But I'll pull back a little from that, of course. First off, of course, yes, thanks for refreshing myself and, the audience's, maybe memory, and the fact that, yes, you had spent the time on InfoWars. That is where I first, of course, had come across you. But it was, I guess, this latest work of yours, when I caught wind of this online, that, of course, really, really caught my attention, because of all of the reading and all of the interviews and conversations that I've been around and been involved in to do with, secret societies and Freemasonry. Throwing into the mix the Islamic culture, the Islamic world, and the kind of, and I also need to mention this as well too, especially specifically to the audience, that the title you're seeing up on screen, I had to shorten a little bit so I could fit most of the key parts in. The actual full title of what Leo's latest work is actually Confessions of an Illuminati, which, of course, I'm sad that I didn't get that up on screen, because it kind of points towards seeing how incredible, where he's coming from really is. We're talking like some whistleblower stuff here. Volume 10. So this is your 10th offering here. Islamic Freemasonry and the secret societies behind the eternal conflict in the Middle East. That's the full title. I'll try to get that up on screen for you guys right away. But of course, yeah, when I saw that, I was instantly taken back by the fact that I had never come across that sort of body of knowledge in the whole realm of Freemasonry at all, ever before. That was completely brand new to me. So,
and relevant to the news of today. So I know that today you're not doing your prairie thing. I heard you before kind of apologizing to your audience, but in a way, today the biggest news of the day, for example, is that Israel is widening up the conflict with Hezbollah, and that is something that you will learn more about if you actually read this book. So this book, it's a history lesson, but it's also connected to the present. So it's a way of understanding where we are now, but also learning how we got to this point and why this eternal conflict is never ending. And you, of course, said the right thing. Very few people discuss the reality of Islamic Freemasonry, and this is one of probably a handful of books that discusses this topic, and probably only a couple of books in the last decades have really touched on it, because there is from the Muslim side a total silence.
So I do have the right website here.
Yes, this is the
Okay,
right
good.
website.
Okay.
You can scroll down. You can actually go in the month of May, and we can maybe check out directly the presentation which I made at the end of May of my book, also my website, which includes also the index that can give you an idea of all the topics that we have touched. You see, the Islamic Freemasonry is a difficult topic, first of all, for the Muslim world. They tend to hide it. They don't want to discuss it. And most of the times they simply accuse the Westerners, the Crusaders, the Freemasons of plotting against them without realizing that a lot of Muslims are involved in this, and they have been involved for a very long time. There is almost 1,000-year-old alliance between the Western Illuminati and their Middle Eastern counterparts. So I think that it's, of course, a book rich in history. It might seem at times a complex topic, but I must say that up until now, I received only praises and compliments for having made digestible, even to a non-Muslim or to a non-Freemason, a reality which includes, of course, all the numerous factions of Islam, because Islam, as you know, from the moment it was established in the 7th century, started the inner fight, an ongoing civil war that never ended within Islam, between the various factions that were initially, of course, the Shiite and the Sunni faction, the original faction that recognized Abu Bakr as the first caliph, and the other one that gave importance to Ali, the fourth Rashidun caliph, and the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, from then the Shiite world came a number of other Muslim schools and even religions that are at times not even very Muslim, because they don't respect the so-called 5 tenets of Islam, like the Druze. We have the Alawis. We have so many that I think for the Western mind at times it becomes really a headache to understand what's going on in the Middle East. And that's why I wanted to bring some clarity with my new book.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and that is so wonderfully put. And really, I guess in a sense, it shouldn't be so surprising, but I'll admit, I'm a little shocked that it was like that quickly. It goes from not just sort of uncovering some maybe kind of, secrets, so on and so forth, that type of thing, involved in that world, but really, you take that directly into, no, I can use this to fully explain why there is so much confusion in that, which, oh my gosh. Yeah, no kidding. Too, I think anybody from the Western world and beyond, especially, since in the last just handful of months, I mean, what was it since what was it, March, the attacks from Hamas on Israel?
It was actually the 7th of October when Hamas conducted this.
Oh, that's right, last October. That's right. My gosh, yes.
But actually, the interesting thing about it was that I had just started the book a week prior to that attack. And
wow.
So I felt even more motivated to finish this book, which was published, as you know, at the end of May. and took me, of course, several months, because this is a complex book. This is a book that has received praise even by the people I criticize, like the Sufis, for example, for being so accurate. There has been no Muslim that has debunked anything from this book. I have reached the top 10 chart in Islamic social studies on Amazon, in Islamic history, and many other categories. And so I'm glad that this book is actually being well received without any criticism, because it's based on facts rather than speculations of any kind. As these are very delicate facts, though, of course, they might shock even the Muslims who go and read it, because the problem is that each Muslim reality doesn't really understand the other realities, the other schools, the other forms of Islam. And so they all miss a piece of the puzzle in their complete understanding of things. So I thought within myself, I had a past experience as a Freemason, like I said, and as an Illuminati. I was actually involved directly with Islam, and my personal involvement got me directly linked with the family of Prophet Muhammad in 2003, when I met my first wife, descendant of Prophet Muhammad, after going in Egypt, where I was conducting a research on behalf of the Illuminati on the so-called Cairo Lodge, which is a very ancient lodge that predates even Islam. And I was there thanks to the Boutros Ghali family. I don't know if you remember Boutros Ghali used to be the Secretary General of the United Nations. And his family, which I met in Norway, invited me to Egypt for a month during Ramadan 2003. And they are Coptic Christians, actually, but I spent the Ramadan there to study and to research the reality of Egyptian Freemasonry. Where was there any Freemasonry left? What kind of connection it had with prior secret societies? So this book, it's not just about knowledge which is found in essays or found in academic papers. It's also about personal experience which has been lived by me, and that end up with the Muslims actually taking my only son, which I made with this first wife, and to him I dedicate this book. I never spoke to him, never in my life, because he was only 1 year and a half when they actually got me accused of espionage in Norway. And I was, and it was thanks to the Ghali family that somehow I got to connect with this other family. And unfortunately, my son was brought away, and his stepfather now is instead Murat Saraili, which you can find on the website of the World Economic Forum, because he's a senior member of Klaus Schwab Davos Club. And of course, they don't let me see him or speak with him. So I hope that one day he's able to read this book and understand everything that went on behind the scenes. And let's not forget that this book also explains the connection to the World Economic Forum that, of course, controls also the Canadian government, as we know, and Justin Trudeau has with the Muslim world, because there is more than a connection that most people told me, wow, I didn't know that the Muslims were in bed with Klaus Schwab and that they were so interconnected. Well, they are. And so it was about time to expose this reality. And for me, of course, like I just told you, it's something that also touches me personally, because having my only son taken by these people and raised by these people is, of course, something that it saddens you, but also makes you understand the evil of this world and what they are trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, like I had kind of mentioned before, and it's always kind of a gift and a curse when I get like a conversation or a guest or a broadcast like this, where, yeah, I mean, there is so much that I would love to be able to ask you and speak to you about. Like, oh my gosh, already the list in my head is a mile long. What was the name of, like you said, I could even find that name on the World Economic Forum website?
It's Murat Saraili.
How do you spell that?
Well, I can send you the link here, so you might be able to then show it to your viewers. I give you the link from the World Economic Forum. If you want, we can. I can send you the link directly in your chat here, in your private chat, so then you can show the audience.
Absolutely.
Here it is.
Yes. Not sure exactly the meaning behind this question, but Jason Bainbridge is asking, are you still cooperating with the WDS?
What is a WDS? Sorry.
That would be my confusion as well, too. I'm not sure.
If you are
all right.
specific.
Jason, you're going to have to, fix. Okay, here we go. I will get that up on screen for the audience right now. Just as Leo was mentioning, here would be the individual he was mentioning. I guess this would be his your son.
This is the stepfather of my son, unfortunately, which is a member of the Fethullah Gulen movement, which kidnapped basically my son when he was 1 year and a half, brought him away from me. And this guy here helped Fethullah Gulen, who is protected and lives here in Pennsylvania, surrounded by 50 bodyguards, and is connected directly to the Clinton Foundation, and was praised as one of the best friends of Bill and Hillary Clinton. So here we're talking about high-level crooks that have taken my son. So, I mean, I have sacrificed a lot. I was actually accused of espionage because I didn't want to in any way comply with their request. So it is a suffering that though brought me also to continue in my mission steadfast. Somebody says, Benjamin Fulford. Benjamin Fulford is a person which I published a couple of books many years ago in Japan, my first books. Unfortunately, then when he came to Italy, I discovered that he was working for the Chinese Freemasons and the Chinese intelligence. And as you know, I'm not really a friend of communism or the Chinese. So from that moment onwards, I distanced myself, and he started a series of improbable accusations that at times get really ridiculous, like he said that I somehow participated in the plot to blow up Fukushima, or even worse, he said that I was controlling Donald J. Trump's clone in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, the guy has no credibility. I think that he started with Forbes as a journalist like me. Later on, he of course wanted to do something different. He walked out of the system, and he actually started to collaborate with Chinese Freemason. And I went there with my future wife in Japan, and we met him, and we discovered that he had been initiated in Chinese Freemasonry, and I showed all the evidence in volume 2 of my confessions. And at that point, of course, like I said, later on, I distanced myself because he's simply conducting a psyop on behalf of the Chinese. And I mean, we have already so many psyop conducted by the Western Illuminati. We don't need the ones conducted by the Chinese ones. So, I mean, it seems like everybody wants a piece of the cake when it comes to the control of the mind of people on the internet. However, I would say to those who are following us, please give zero credibility to people like him who tend to mix too much reality and fiction, and in the end this damages, of course, the people who are really fighting and who are really denouncing this new world order or disorder, however you want to call it, with facts and not with fiction.
Yeah, well said, well said. And so again, kind of going back to something I kind of tried to touch on a little bit earlier. And I know you've also elaborated further anyhow, but I want to make sure we're not missing anything, which of course is an incredible, the timing, because if I didn't know that, you know, shortly after these attacks almost a year ago now, you know, from Hamas in Israel and everything that's happened since, you were just starting to write this book then. And as I was trying to allude to, although it's really nothing new, it's funny a lot of the times, especially I would imagine increasingly more so here in the Western world and beyond. We have incredibly short memories, and we tend to easily forget. One new big event happens, as traumatic as it may be, and then it's like, everything is just all restarted, everything's all refreshed, everything's new again. It's these two countries are at war. Wow, how did that happen? But of course, there's so much history, and as the Western world has.
I'm sorry if I interrupt, but in reality, I had predicted in my books all this scenario. I predicted the start of the war in Ukraine, the future war in Taiwan. I also predicted the arrival of the pandemic in volume 2 of my confessions for 2020. So I was very accurate, almost too accurate at times. And that's why, for example, here in America, Volume 2 is censored in certain states. Censored meaning that they don't let the prisoners inside the prison system read this book. It's like prohibited. It's a very weird thing to have a book prohibited in the prisons, but mine ended up being prohibited in certain states. So for of course, for those who are inmates of federal prisons or state prisons. So I think that we are in front of a scenario which is just getting started, because like I wrote in volume 7, which is focused on the occult nature of the World Economic Forum, and it's another very interesting book that I made. I have it actually here somewhere. I can show it to you. This is a book that a lot of people should read to understand not only the geopolitical or economical consistency of the proposals of the World Economic Forum, but the occult roots of the World Economic Forum, how Klaus Schwab came to create this Illuminati club. Klaus Schwab is a professor just like Adam Weishaupt, if you think about it, the founder of the original Illuminati. But there is much more to it. There is a pact of the catacombs that went on in the last days of the Second Vatican Council that led to the establishment of the present-day Davos, because one of the founders of this pact of the catacombs was then brought in the middle of the 70s to Davos by Klaus Schwab. And he said himself, this was one of the most risky moments of his career, when he brought this Red Bishop, because he was known as the Red Bishop, Bishop Camara, and suddenly Davos, that of course at the time was filled with people who were pushing only capitalism against the threat that was posed by the Soviet Union, started to change the way things were done in favor of a more communistic view. But also let's remember MIT that influenced certain research that was then delivered at the Club of Rome, and then later on at the Davos institution that was just being established in the early 70s by Klaus Schwab with the help of people like Henry Kissinger. So I think that it's very important to understand today that we are in front of a global takeover that ultimately wants to position us in the hands of Cyber Satan. Cyber Satan is a definition which I used in 3 of my books, which is called, I defined it as the trilogy of Cyber Satan, volume 6.66, volume 7, and volume 9, because Cyber Satan in 2030 wants to control this reality and help the rise of the Antichrist. And of course, the religion of choice for establishing this one world religion project is also Islam. And that's why Pope Francis in early 2019 went and established the Human Fraternity document that led to the Fratelli Tutti encyclica, which is a Masonic encyclica, up to the alliances that Pope Francis has been putting together, not only in the Sunni world, but also he went to Iraq in the middle of the pandemic to dialogue with the Shiite and celebrate a mass in the city of Ur, which is reputed to be the fundamental for the birth of the Brahmic religions, but also for the Illuminati. So we have two ancient, let's say, societies that then delivered this Illuminati, and they were not in Europe. They were in Mesopotamia, they were in Egypt, they were in the Middle East. The origins of the secret societies, as we know them, and Freemasonry, which is a society with secrets, is to be found in the Middle East. So I find it really strange that up until now, nobody wanted to put together all this and actually show you how the Knights Templars were inspired by the Assassins, how there was this lodge in Cairo which established then a series of religious beliefs that, of course, were initially Muslims and then
and you know, and in a couple major ways for me, it's all wrapping together really nicely. Like, you know, we in a lot of these areas of conversation, you know, you'll hear the kind of term or the statement about, like, you know, that the New World Order is going to have to, you know, is going to bring forth a one world religion. And usually when that conversation comes up, when that topic comes up, it usually goes directly into just, and this is as very much as part of this conversation as the rest, but usually the number one thing that gets talked about once you open that door is the destruction of, say, Christianity. And then that just becomes the, you know, the sort of like what seems to be the majority of the conversation from that point on. But the other side of it.
But it's not only the destruction of Christianity, it's the takeover of every single religion that was ever established.
Well, and how the secret societies are organizing that, and what is sort of like their sort of like key cornerstones of their own sort of belief system that they're inputting and using as they go around the world, sort of doing like you were just explaining. And so you just kind of brought that really into the same arena, which is amazing. I just wanted to touch on that. And so even like and just quickly as well too, even like a Klaus Schwab, are they like spiritual in that sense as well too, just as much as, say, someone from the Vatican? Like, you know, does he have these really like deep-seated beliefs of this, you know, I guess this Luciferian one world thing that is not that of course, you know, now but that belongs also in Middle Eastern culture and now in China, so on and so forth. Like, do they all, when you're like, I guess, at the echelon of a Klaus Schwab, like, are their belief systems at that point all very kind of unified?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand that within the inner circle, they only use religion to control and oppress the masses. But in reality, like the Cairo Lodge established this very long time ago, they said, for example, during the Fatimid dynasty, and this was, of course, over 1,000 years ago, and 1,000 years ago, they also established this house of knowledge, which was this very important center, just like the house of wisdom in Baghdad. Inside the lodge, there will not be any religion that prevails. There will be simply reason, science. Religion is a tool.
Just about to mention that, like Newtonianism and other things that have always been meant very much a great deal to these people.
You see, Christianity was taken over by the Illuminati that tried for 2,000 years to sabotage it. And in the end, they planted with the Second Vatican Council the seeds for the Jesuit takeover that eventually happened over 10 years ago, as you know, with the advent for the first time of a Jesuit in the Petrine ministry. So becoming Pope was not something that the Jesuits had ever done. It's unusual. It's something that I had talked about for many years before it even happened, and that was confirmed also by people like Alex Jones that were astonished by the fact that I had denounced the Jesuits for a very long time, and he didn't really believe this line of conspiracy, let's say. And then suddenly, when he saw manifesting with Pope Francis the whole thing, he came to Rome personally to apologize. And at the time, we started a collaboration. So, and it was actually 2 years ago, after the Sandy Hook CRO took control of the InfoWars, that I was immediately thrown out of the show. I mean, the Alex Jones show, or Owen, or the other guy, Harrison, these are all people who I've worked for a very long time with, but the Vatican didn't want me there. And so when the CRO that it was appointed to control InfoWars after they are in theory bankrupt, the first thing they demanded was to kick out Leo Zagami. That is actually a badge of honor, I think, the fact that the guy who is now in control of the InfoWars store kicked out my books, first of all, put away my books that are no longer on sale on InfoWars store, but also prohibited Alex to have me on again. So this is, I think, a very interesting thing. I mean, people know, of course, more Alex Jones than they know Leo Zagami. But as you know, for many years, I was...
And certainly nothing that I was planning on. Like, this is kind of still blowing me away. I mean, and what's happening to Alex Jones and InfoWars is still unfolding right now is some of the biggest news also in the world. So, my gosh, I'm getting a lot more. We're all getting a lot better than we bargained for, everybody. Leo, my gosh, I should be saying nothing.
No. I think that we are here.
Take it away, man.
No, but today we are here especially to discuss this latest book because it actually is very important to understand this latest book. Because, for example, the problem that today I have with people like InfoWars is their blatant anti-Semitism, that they don't seem to understand that you can't just blame a whole race like the Jews. It's a much more complex matter here. It's a much more complex matter. We are dealing with an heresy within the Jewish people that was simply piloted by the same people that sabotaged the Catholic and Christian churches and who sabotage all the other religions. So this is why we can't really blame a religion, if not those sects that destroy the religion. Like within the Catholic world, the Jesuits, of course, they have always been at the top of the pyramid, working with their Luciferian court of Illuminati, and they eventually managed to get control of the whole Catholic Church. And of course, that is something very important in their future project of establishing a one-world religion. Today, like I explained in volume 7, and there is a whole chapter about the one-world religion here, Freemasonry is directly involved in aiding the Vatican, and together with the Muslim world, they are putting together the basis for this one world religion, which ultimately will be in the hands of the artificial intelligence. That's why Saudi Arabia is investing billions in the artificial intelligence research. Artificial intelligence is the algorithm. Now, the algorithm is not something that comes from nowhere. Algorithm was the actual word. It derives from an Islamic thinker. And algebra, it's an Arab thing. It's at one point there was an Islamic golden age. It wasn't made out of them being so creative, but mostly because they invaded large parts of the world.
Are we talking like the Ottoman Empire?
But even before the Ottoman Empire, the Fatimid dynasty, and then, of course, the Seljuk Turks, and then later on the Ottoman Empire for 800 years. And then, of course, we go in the East, even India. Then, of course, today we have Pakistan. We have large parts of the world that embraced Islam, that started from the Arabian Peninsula, but then went on to conquer the places where the Illuminati were actually established. Do you think the Illuminati will let them spread this fate if they didn't control it first? So what happened was immediately the Zoroastrians, who are part of the Illuminati establishment, the Manichaeans, the Gnostics, because they were the original Illuminati, they were not simply wiped off the face of the earth when Islam came along. They established secret societies to preserve their knowledge and then mix it together with Islam. And eventually we will have Sufism also, which is made of tariqas, of secret societies that soon after allied with the Western Freemasons, and before that with the Knights Templars, allying with the Shiite Nizari assassins against the expanding Seljuk Turks of Saladin. So the Vatican understood that they could play all these factions of Islam one against the other, as long as they infiltrated them or they made some deals with them. And the deal that was made with the assassins was to use them as killers to kill part of the Seljuk Turks establishment, and then preserve their own name. Because you see, these knighthoods that were established by the Vatican couldn't go in the Middle East and behave like killers. They were crusaders. They were wearing a cross. They were supposed to be men of God. The Knights Templars were actually monks that were also military. So they created this secret alliance. And here you are showing, of course, the Persian mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, who is the guy who gave the name to the algorithm. And the algorithm is simply technology that comes out of, it's like a genie that comes out of the bottle. And that genie that comes out of the bottle now is producing Cyber Satan. But the genie reality also within Islam is very interesting. I have done, aside from my 10 volumes of Illuminati Confessions, Pope Francis the Last Pope, but also a book called Invisible Master. And in Invisible Master, I discuss very much the Islamic reality of the invisible world, of the interdimensional beings that they call the jinn. That in this latest book, I also explain how the Western Illuminati, that were also known as the Rosicrucians, then called the Elementals with Paracelsus. And in the Fama Fraternitatis, which was one of the manifestos of the Rosicrucians, they explained in an allegory, in a story, how this happened, how this Christian Rosencreutz, this legendary character, went to the Middle East, and in the city of Fez, he was initiated to the understanding of these elementals, which were in reality in the Muslim world, and they are still known to this day as the jinn. They are interdimensional creatures. They are interdimensional creatures that exist even in Mecca, where Mecca was the birthplace of Islam, because Muhammad started there his preaching, and of course outside of Mecca in a cave he channeled this book, the Quran. But Mecca was a pagan city. There was many idols, as much as 360, and he was kicked out initially for being a monotheistic man, or a guy who wanted to embrace only one God, because these merchants who were in charge of the city of Mecca said, "You're going to send us out of business. We have a lot of religious establishments here who will be upset with you." However, there was a particularity, and that particularity has always been there. The Kaaba, as we see it today at the end of the Hajj, the Kaaba that has produced now with the latest pilgrimage 1,000 deaths because of the heat. So God must not be that happy with Islam. If there is 1,000 people dying at 125 degrees Fahrenheit, it means that something is cooking there. Something hellish is cooking there. But in the city of Mecca, there is actually a mosque dedicated to the jinn. It's a mosque where humans are not allowed to go. It's a mosque that if you go as a human, and I know people who went inside there to just experiment a prayer inside that mosque, well, after a few minutes, they were kicked out by invisible forces they couldn't even see, that knocked on their back and said, "Oh, you are not allowed here."
Wow.
So the conversion of Islam doesn't happen only in this dimension. Muhammad is the only religion of the Abrahamic faiths that proposes the possibility for what we will call demons or entities or whatever to actually convert. And so you have the genie who converts and believes in the Quran. You have the genie who is a demon, an ifrit, a follower of Shaitan. That is, and so there is, even in the invisible world, a difference between these entities. And at the same time, we have a very powerful portal that is present in Mecca, and an egregor which is produced by them going around this monolith, just as the one we see, of course, in 2001 Space Odyssey. So the Illuminati, what do they believe? I mean, they believe in the fact that humans were somehow produced by divine intervention, which is basically extraterrestrial intervention. Now, this extraterrestrial intervention somehow made it possible for these entities to manifest things like the pyramids that were used as places for initiation. This initiation that eventually will give you an understanding of these interdimensional portals and a dialogue with this. And I mean, this is very dangerous stuff, though. And a lot of people who get mixed up with the occult inevitably end up with big problems. And at times they need to be even exorcised. And I'm saying this because even myself, unfortunately, I felt victim of that. And I ended up having to have an exorcism in Egypt because I was under attack by a black magician, and I had dealt with the Illuminati in this obscure occult rituals, which definitely leave you traces of these entities on you that you need to then take away, eradicate from your system if you want to live a healthy life. Most people, though, they let these demons, these entities inside their lives, even without being aware of what they're doing, simply by neglecting a belief in God. And at that point, the biggest trick of the devil is obviously to not make people believe even exist. So the moment in which they don't believe even exist, or whatever we are discussing today, they think it's crazy, okay, fine, continue. But then your life will still be controlled from the invisible world in a way that you will have no control over it. And so you might be skeptic, you might be saying, I'm only science and reason. Now, when the Muslims said science and reason, though they understood the invisible world, so their science and their reason included, however, a belief in that invisible world and a respect for that invisible world. And alchemy, which also is a very important part of what, let's say, established the Renaissance, and of course Hermetica, they also somehow were filtered through the Islamic culture. But the Illuminati and the Western Freemasons also managed to create, with this alliance with the Muslim Illuminati, the Muslim counterparts, that evil side of Islam, which we see in terrorism, in Salafi jihadism, in organizations that were established by the Freemasons, like the Muslim Brotherhood. And then the Muslim Brotherhood was established in 1928. And from the Muslim Brotherhood, you have other organizations like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah. And at times, the Western mind doesn't understand how is it possible that Hamas, for example, is Sunni, is collaborating with Iran, which is Shia.
And it's this kind of confusion and stuff that, of course, is easy to light on fire like a tinder box by our horrible propaganda media that I was alluding to earlier. Exactly that. Thank you.
No, absolutely, because the ignorance reigns supreme. The media is definitely not going to explain what kind of contacts they have.
No, they're going to make it worse.
They're going to make it worse. They're not going to explain that, for example, in the 60s and 70s, those people that eventually in 1979 took over the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was established and by not only by Khomeini, but also all his followers, and of course the clerics behind the scenes, they had a long tradition in the Shiite world, which goes back to the Assassins, those original jihadists which worked for the Knights Templars. And the modern Knights Templars of today are the ones like the Bushes who collaborating with those jihadists to bring down the Twin Towers. But it wasn't only, like I explain in my book, an inside job, but was an inside-out job. Because you have part of this Illuminati of the Middle East, and Osama bin Laden was one of them. Osama bin Laden was a member of the Illuminati of the Middle East. He was
spent time at some prestigious universities in the U.S., right? Where
absolutely his family is connected with the Bushes, and it was all part a great alliance that could facilitate. In the end,
in a sense, was there some sort of like major? Because I know these things kind of happen, you know, big steps with smaller steps in between over time. So was 9/11 sort of like, because you had also alluded earlier in the broadcast to like sort of like the Islamic faith being really used as sort of the pinnacle of the sort of New World Order one religion, what the secret societies have kind of chosen to really, I guess, be their vehicle for Luciferianism moving forward. So was like a 9/11 like a big step in the things that you are saying, like wrote this book about today?
Okay, 9/11 is a product of what was created behind the scenes with the establishment of the Project for the New American Centuries. It was a neoconservative quasi-Masonic think tank based in Washington, D.C., founded in 1997 and dissolved in 2017. By George H.W. Bush, who was, of course, one of the main puppet masters of this organization that included people like Samuel Huntington, Donald Kagan, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and so on. And, of course, also Monte Carlo Lodge member Michael Leiden. They based their project on a book that was called The Clash of Civilizations and the Remarking of World Order, which was authored by the late Illuminati kingpin Samuel Huntington. And the deep state, the Freemasons and the Bonesmen like George H.W. Bush are the modern heirs to those Knights Templars who established that alliance almost 1,000 years ago. Because when the Vatican started these crusades, it actually transformed forever in worse the Christian faith. The Christian faith was never about crusades. Jesus never said to fight a holy war in that way. It was forbidden somehow. But when the Pope saw the advancing threat of the Muslims, who he could no longer push one against the other without himself also having fearing the consequence of being even invaded, because they had reached the south of Italy, they had conquered enormous parts of the world, and they were a threat. So what did he do? He established these knighthoods that mimic the knighthoods of Islam. And also this concept of the jihad based on a holy book that it was new. So they had to also create these knighthoods like the Knights Templars, and they were based on these secret societies and these orders in the Middle East, prevalently in modern day Syria. So Christianity in the hands of the Pope did its first mistake that we still see the consequences today, because today when you go in the Middle East, the average Muslim will tell you it's all the fault of the Crusaders and of course Greater Israel, and it's a blame game that unfortunately it's not resolved if we don't understand that the Christians have definitely done something wrong when they started with these crusades, but at the same time the Muslims themselves had started with the concept of Ribat and these fortresses to establish something that the Pope wanted to imitate, because he wanted to protect the pilgrims who went to Jerusalem. Jerusalem became a holy city for the Muslims as a geopolitical and strategical tool. 5 years after Muhammad was dead, one of his companions invaded and, of course, conquered Jerusalem. But then we see in the Quran this whole story of Muhammad going to the Temple Mount on a winged creature and all that. And it's very confusing, because then you think, oh, wow, they have a right to be there, because Muhammad had been to Jerusalem. He never visited Jerusalem. It was all fictional. It was all placed there in a very well-crafted way. So, of course, they could conquer a very important city for the Christians and the Jews and establish that Temple Mount reality of today, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and all that, which is considered the third most holy place of Islam. When today we see Hamas, in fact, calls the Al-Aqsa Brigades, because Al-Aqsa is the mosque that is there. So it's all about fighting about something which was actually the home of, originally it was the King Solomon's temple, which, as you know, also becomes the main central allegory of Freemasonry. So, and it became also the headquarters of the Knights Templar. So they're all fighting for the same.
And as you kind of mention in the title of your book, the full title that I don't really have up on screen again, but I'll put the image back up on right away. And this is at least one aspect of the whole everything in the Middle East that it really surprises me that people could forget, which is the eternal nature of it. You use the word eternal in the title very, it's very proper. It's very proper use of the word very much belongs to be there. And the way that you just explained it there, kind of saying how it's set up and it's geopolitical. Inside of that, it being a setup geopolitically, because it's a setup that goes back, many hundreds of years. Is that setup, when you use the word geopolitical, also not like the understanding of eternal conflict in that way, to have an eternal sense of conflict that I guess and that eternal sense must have an end to it, right? Where eternal for maybe a few thousand years, but then we got to get to this point, or where does that go? How eternal is that? But
in the hands of the Illuminati, we have to go back to the old motto, divide et impera, which means divide and conquer. You divide different factions and you position them against each other. So in the end, you are actually dominating everybody.
What is the importance of having the epicenter of where all of that sort of conflict is going to be? What is the design on having an actual epicenter for all of that to exist in? Not just divide and conquer, because divide and conquer exists in propaganda in a sort of in a worldwide sense, but the reasons for having it all having to also be centered geographically, very centered.
Because those are ley lines, those are portals, those are very important energetic centers, like Jerusalem, for example, that assumes, of course, the characteristic of being worshipped by all the Abrahamic faiths, because it was, since ancient times, a very important location.
Is there a belief?
So the divide and rule policy is basically there to make sure that then they can still control everything.
Is there sort of a belief that the actual conflict itself and how that conflict creates energy, throughout the world?
Of course,
it creates energy that gets centered there, right?
But we had also the creation of new energy when we had 9/11 and the establishment, and I talk about it in my book, when 9/11 becomes the way all this hate gets directed, and then the military industrial complex can move in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and so it's a never ending game of hate that though produces money, because who is benefiting from it all is either the military industrial complex or big pharma, because these soldiers, they get hurt, they get psychologically wounded, they come back home and they need, of course, the help of big pharma, but at the same time, they have already made a lot of money for the military industrial complex. That's why Joe Biden left $1 billion of equipment not carrying in Afghanistan, because that was like, okay, we already produced, it's already been paid for, the military industrial complex has enriched itself, we can leave, that's it. So, I mean, it's of course a very evil thing, but now, of course, I don't have much time left, as you know, I'm a bit... but I would like to continue maybe if it's possible, because today, as you know, we only scratch the surface, not only of this book, but also of all my other work, which I suggest your viewers to go and check out at leozagami.com, where they will find the links to all my latest book, as well as if they want to, simply by putting Leo Lion Zagami on Amazon, and they can get all my work there. But it was a very interesting conversation, and I hope that we can have a follow-up in the future.
Not only have you blown me away time and time again throughout the last hour with everything that you've been able to touch on, and certain things about your history that I kind of was even forgetting myself, and how powerful that is even right now today. You blew me away even almost even larger than the other ones right at the end there, because it's probably been a long time since I've had a guest. But let's put it this way. I usually have to say at the end of a great broadcast to the guest, oh my gosh, do I ever want to have you back? So it's been a while since a guest has said, oh my gosh, do I ever want to continue this? So that's awesome. I could not agree more. Leo,
when the chat flows, when you see that, you know, there is interest, and also I see your audience is very interested in these topics. They are actually very accurate in some of the explanations that themselves have put forward. Other, of course, have made some interesting marks and questions that we might be bringing forward the next time for some answers. However, I thank you for guesting me today. We only met recently, and I want to say hello again to all the Winnipeg Alternative Media followers and viewers, and thank you for having me on.
Leo, it's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great rest of the night, and we will have you back as soon as you'd like to come back. I'm here for you, man. I'm at your service. I'd love
Thank you very much, Todd. All the best, and God bless Canada also with Justin Trudeau, which I don't know, guys. Get rid of this guy. It's a nightmare.
We just had some news about a week or so ago that doesn't surprise any Canadian at all, that tons of us are leaving for Florida right now. So
I know, but you should still get back your Canada.
I agree, Leo.
From this World Economic Forum demons. Take care, guys. All the best.
Take care, Leo. Thank you.
Bye.
Wow. Well, see, what can I say, right? I could say lots of different things, but really I shouldn't be saying much of anything. Just leave the great broadcast where it is. I mean, I just want to say this, I guess. It's, of course, something like that makes, oh gosh, I could probably have at least 5 embarrassing things happen on a live broadcast, you know. What was the last 2? Well, I think 2 out of the last 3 or 4 that I've been on, because I've been with the 13th hour guys as well too. But at least 2 of my latest ones were pretty poor. We had, good old Jared Nathan drop the broadcast a few minutes in. Then we had Colin coming on to, talk UFOs, not being able to screen share. And both of those were, not so fun, but I could have at least 4 or 5 more of those. And a broadcast like this completely makes up for it. So there's that. All the more reason to press on. Okay. Well, everybody, like I said earlier, certainly going to be back hopefully within the next just couple of days. I'm going to really hope that it should be this weekend. I'm going to maybe shoot for Sunday night. Let's go Sunday night. It's always a really good one for doing 49th parallel with Colin and delving back into UFOs around Richardson International Airport. Again, I have seen some of the stuff he's got. It's going to be a great broadcast. Okay, so don't worry. We're going to have it all ironed out, and that one's going to be a success. Other than that, shoot. I'd like to say I could get Jared back on real soon, but I can't promise that just yet. He's busy. He's on tour, busy doing shows. And I don't know exactly when the next Prairie Truth broadcast is going to be, but I guess at this point I'll say, if not any time this weekend, if all of a sudden something just kind of comes together for me, then I'll shoot for early next week, maybe next Tuesday or so. I won't leave it all the way until next Thursday. I might try to, not miss an entire full week and get something going a little bit before next Thursday. So yeah, there's that. Of course, Daryl Inkster is always live with y'all. Is 13th Hour doing this weekend? I can't recall. I'm not sure. I think maybe. Yes, they are. For sure they are. Okay. So that's coming up in the next few days as well too. And let's see a quick little look at some comments. Oh, and again, thank you everybody for watching. Yeah, it's been a little while since it's been a really good solid hour like this in studio for me. So it's been nice. Thank you very much, Tommy. I don't know what that name. Oh, look, Rebellio Pressi TV Italy. Ooh, I wonder why they're watching. That's cool. Oh, Canada needs help. Yeah. That's, to say the least. Do you know about the silver pine tree shillings? People in Massachusetts. A lot of talk about Massachusetts there from you there, Tommy or Tommy or whatever there is. But no, sorry, not really much. No idea what's going on there with Massachusetts. Maybe something that we can get into next time we have Leo on. If that's a whole bunch of stuff about, secret societies and Freemasonry, then yeah. Sorry, we didn't get to that while he was still with us there, Tommy, whoever, sorry. But we'll try to, maybe we can cover that next time. Is that 3 cheerses from Rebellio Pressi TV Italy? Cool. Thanks for watching. And that will be a thanks to everybody for watching, which means I should go put that up on screen right now, right? Oh, look, there we go. All right. Well, yeah, that does it for me, everybody. Have a great rest of your Thursday night. And I'll be back soon. We got other broadcasts coming up throughout the weekend. That's for sure, everybody. So stick with us. And let's see. How do I want to play this out? I wish I had like a good video from Jaro that would kind of be kind of sort of secret society-ish, but not really. Oh, well, okay, I guess I have to. I got to play the most popular one. All right, everybody. Good night. God bless. Pray.
Welcome to the 2023 World Economic Forum.
Excuse me.
I penetrate deep half of this cabinet. We need to overcome climate change. But the spirit of Davos is into the negative, the most critical fragmentation, extinction.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
We do know we have to uphold our responsibility. The reshaping of supply chains, systemic transformation. Our generation has reached a turning point. Quantum computing, climate change, extinction. I penetrate Prime Minister Trudeau.
Never apologize for an LBT.
Stupid son of a bitch.
Come on, man.